Welcome to Race Industry Now, the weekly webinar series from EPARTRADE, presented to you by ARP, Performance Plus Global Logistics, Feria Racing Components, PIC, Fifth Third Bank Motorsport, Quire, and CTEC Manufacturing. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of EPARTRADE, the racing industry, every minute, every day. This is episode 537, and we're going to be talking brakes with Delta ABS. With me this morning are Judy Kin, the co-founder of EPARTRADE, and our wonderful host.
Thank you, Francisque, and thank you everyone for joining today. We know this industry is all about making race cars go fast, but you have to make them stop. So today is a prime example of another high-tech supplier that we are presenting to you and the industry on Race Industry Now and showcased on the platform. So, Brad?
Well, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Francisque. Looking forward to this. We'll talk to you all here shortly. And to Judy's point, going faster doesn't always mean hitting the gas pedal. It also means hitting the brake pedal and how long you can do that. So today's webinar, unlock faster lap times and total braking control, a fresh approach to motorsport ABS by Delta ABS. And our panelists who are joining us now, Matthew Payne, the Sales and Marketing Director, SCS Delta UK, and Chris Law, the Marketing Manager of Delta ABS USA. And gentlemen, welcome. Couldn't be more thrilled that y'all are here.
Thanks for having us, Brad.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Matt. I think you guys have a video. We want to go ahead and start with that, just to sort of set the tone for what we'll be talking about here today.
Yeah, let's roll it.
In racing, the driver who brakes last wins. But road car ABS systems aren't built for that. They cut in too early, trigger ice mode, and rob you of braking confidence when you need it most. This is Delta ABS, a fully standalone motorsport ABS system engineered by SCS Delta in the UK. Developed for competition, not compromise. No ice mode, no excessive cycling, just maximum braking force every time. Every part is purpose-built for racing, from the modulator and valves to the software algorithms that control them. With race-proven hardware and easy-to-use software, Delta ABS is already trusted in hundreds of cars competing around the world. With 10 cockpit-adjustable settings, Delta ABS puts the driver in full control, fine-tuning the system for changing grip, tire compounds, or weather conditions. Setup is easy. Delta's software gives you full access to bleeding, diagnostics, and vehicle-specific configuration. Designed for front-rear split braking systems and includes dual brake pressure sensors, perfect for balance bar setups. The result? Later braking, shorter distances, faster lap times, easy to install, FIA compliant, built for serious competitors. Brake later, stop faster. Delta ABS.
All right, I'm pretty excited about this one. This is going to be a great conversation. And before we get started, if you're watching us live right now, I want to remind you that this is a conversation and it's one in which you can participate. Think of us as being at a trade show. Again, if you want to ask Chris or Matt any question about the system, how to get it, how to install it, all of that, this is the time to do that. And all you need to do is just type your question into the chat feature and we'll cover everything that you want to know about Delta ABS. Chris, I want to start with you. You're here in the United States. Just give us a little bit of an overview of the Delta ABS system and why I would want this for my race car.
Well, Delta ABS is a motorsport ABS system built from the ground up to be a motorsport solution. It doesn't reuse any factory components. There is no factory programming. Everything was programmed over in the UK by the gentleman at SCS Delta. So it is, I guess I would say our target market would be the pro amateur and pro racing markets that have a need for motorsport ABS, but aren't quite serviced by the options that are on the market today.
That makes sense. Matt, if you would tell us a little bit about this system. You know, a lot of times when we talk about racing, hey, look, I'm all about some driver aids and some things that are going to help me make faster lap times. But I also know that there are plenty of people that say, hey, look, my left or right foot is all the ABS that I need. What do you say to that?
Yeah. I'd say to that, unless they have more than a left and a right foot, you need four if you want to be able to brake at the absolute limit on each wheel all the time. And that's where the joy of this system is. You can still threshold brake, you can still get it right on the edge, but as one wheel lets go and you're turning, the weight distribution of the car changes, it can take up the extra slack from the system. It's especially useful in cars like front-wheel drive cars, for instance, that often have to be set up incredibly stiff and a rear wheel is up in the air. That wheel will slow down if you are braking with a normal system. And you'll either get a couple of compromises with that, but one of the main ones is actually when it touches down, if you straighten up, if you've still got any braking force on, that wheel is locked. Whereas with our system, you've taken all the pressure out of that wheel, and that wheel is up in the air with no pressure behind it. So when it comes back down, it's much, much more stable on the way out of the corner.
Yeah, and as we know, look, racing, there are several factors to making great lap times. I mean, we talk about being able to accelerate out of the corner, but if you're going to do that in an efficient way, you need to have a much more efficient way of breaking into the corner. Matt, is that kind of a fair description?
It certainly is. And it also it changes your mindset because you have confidence, especially on first laps, cold tires, you know that the system is there underneath you. And if you go in a little deep, well, it's okay. You can recover from that. Whereas if you've locked up all the wheels, there's nothing you can do aside from coming out and you're giving away braking performance then on the first corner, and somebody will be up the inside of you at that point.
Yeah, and that's never a great thing. You don't want that. You want to be the one making that move for sure. Chris, let's talk about this system and some experience that you've had so far here in the United States with some customers and everything. What type of reaction are you getting?
I would say that our number one interest has been from the Corvette community and from the pro touring community. So the solutions that are currently on the market they're not really adjustable for those vehicles. They're, tend to be heavier vehicles, longer vehicles. They're American vehicles. And so those systems end up with limitations, with compromises in the way that they're done. So these systems have been super popular with those guys.
Okay, so you mentioned Corvette. What do you say to someone who says, well, my Corvette already has a factory ABS system on it. Now I'm just track daying it or racing or whatever. What's wrong with what I already have?
From what I've heard, I don't think anybody with a Corvette factory ABS system is going to be happy that they still have it. So it's not really going to compare. This is a motorsport system and that's a street car system. And I guess one of the things that I put out there for people is that those street car systems, by and large, are developed with stability in mind first. And so they're constantly fighting the yaw of the car. And in a performance environment, you want to be able to control the car how you see fit. And this system allows you to do that because it's not trying to control the stability of the car. It is.
Can I step in very quickly on this one?
Yeah.
Road cars are often calibrated. Well, a road car system has to be able to perform to a test level. And the test levels that are set up for road cars, Annex 6 is one of the biggest ones for European manufacturers. And the key part of the ABS test is that in a mixed mu surface, two wheels on different surfaces, the car must not rotate the steering wheel more than 240 degrees. And it can actually increase the stopping distance and still pass the test by up to 30%. So you have to see that a road car system is going to be for stability, not necessarily for performance. Whereas a race car driver, yes, stability in really bad conditions is something that you want some of, but in dry conditions, you want the car to rotate. You want it to be able to trail brake and still get the nose to tuck in and the rear to become slightly loose if you wanted it to, whereas a road car system will have it heading in a relatively straight line. It's part of the reason why we have a slip position switch. You can change the stability along with the interaction of the system so the driver can actually tailor it while they're out on track.
That's really cool. In fact, while we're talking about this, I also want to, kind of help start this conversation about this system and how simple it truly is and honestly cost efficient. Because look, when you're sitting here saying, oh, installing ABS, oh my gosh, what am I going to have to do? Am I going to have to run all the brake lines? What about wheel sensors? What about pumps? What about this? And then what about wiring and all of that? You guys already have that solution in place, right?
Yeah, so this is a complete kit. It's what we like to call vehicle agnostic. It's sold with everything you need for like the electronic modules, sensors, and wiring. There's only a handful of adaptation points that you run into, and it's just going to depend upon if the car originally had ABS or if it doesn't have any sort of factory ABS whatsoever. But that's hydraulics, mechanical, the wheel speed sensors, and then power and ground is like just a generic wiring thing that wiring task you have to accomplish.
Yeah, what am I talking about? Is this an afternoon project? Is this a weekend? Is this a weeks long project if I want to install the system?
If the car already had ABS, it can be a weekend project. And I say that because cars that predate ABS or have a single rear circuit for the ABS will need some extra lines made. And depending upon your experience with that, that could take a little bit longer. But other than that, yeah, it's a very relatively short installation procedure.
Matt, you want to add to that? I mean, can you,
Yeah, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. So the loom essentially is designed to fit into any car. The kit can come with sensors that we supply and know that will work. But actually, there's a lot of sensors already on the market that can be used with the system. So we have a long list, and Delta ABS, obviously over in the States, have got a list as well of sensors that are known to work with the system. So there's a switching current 714 milliamps. And most cars produced from about the mid-2000s to now will have sensors that are suitable. So it really does help to fit the system onto a car that has an existing but not motorsport orientated ABS system.
Yeah, that's the one thing I love about it is, again, it's very simple. And you talk about, a lot of the different things that are already on cars. But getting back to the conversation we were just having about this, and like you'd mentioned, Matt, I mean, look, the engineers at Chevrolet and Porsche and so on and so forth, they're thinking about safety when they're thinking
Correct.
about ABS. This is performance when we're thinking about ABS. And as racers, we want to do several different things. Also, as racers, we want to kind of getting back to that manual part of it. Sometimes we have different systems in our car already to help with braking. Maybe we have balance
Yes.
bars, proportioning valves, and all of that. How does this system fit into it?
Yeah, so it's designed purely for performance. We have very few racers that I know of are going to involve ice and snow, so there is no ice mode in the system. So it cannot lock you out of the brakes entirely, which a road car system can, because if they detect that you are on an ice surface, they need to get rid of all of the pressure very quickly. The problem is, if you put slicks onto a car that wasn't ever designed to take it, you go over a threshold of deceleration, and the systems are engineered to say, that is an implausible amount of deceleration. You therefore must be on ice. So at that point, they lock you out of the brakes until the system works out that actually you're not on ice and you're slowing down very quickly. We don't have that in the system. There is no ice mode provision deliberately because we expect you to be able to decelerate at whatever rate the tires will allow. And some hot, sticky tires are going to offer a huge amount of deceleration.
Thank you for answering that ice mode question because I was kind of curious about that, and it makes complete sense about the way everything works. As far as the ABS module goes, this is all manufactured by Delta ABS. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we make all of the electronics in-house. I've got a selection of parts that are here. So a bare circuit board, a completed circuit board, and the module itself. We are an electronics manufacturer. We are that is what we manufacture. The hardware is designed to our specification with all of the very specific for motorsport application needs that it has. So in an ABS system, there are an accumulator or two accumulators for each bank that allow a quick drop of pressure back out of the caliper. And if you have a small road car orientated system, it can only drop a certain amount of pressure out in a certain time. The current trend with motorsport applications is more and more pistons, bigger brakes, and there is an amount of fluid that has to move with that. If you lock up a system with very large calipers, very large pistons, it's moving a lot of fluid. We need to empty that fluid very, very quickly. So the hardware that we have in this system has very large accumulators relative to most of the systems on the market, deliberately so that we can unlock a locking large motorsport designed caliper.
That's actually pretty fascinating the way that works. Now, setting this system up. All right, so I get everything installed. You know, I've got the very simple wiring loom and all of the other things. Now, what do I do next? How do I get it programmed for my car? Is there a lot of software involved in this, and is that difficult?
Very simple, or this is what we aim for at least. It is modeled inside of the ECU with the 10 positions, so that the end user only has to fill out a certain number of forms about their car. So we need to know weight of the car, dimensions of the car, weight of the wheels individually, so we know how they're going to respond. And that's one page in software. So it's a relatively simple, straightforward. It could be done in 10, 15 minutes of filling that data in as part of the setup. So that bit is pretty straightforward.
Okay, so it's almost just like going to a tailor and giving him your measurements, and once you input all that data, which if we're racing, by the way, we should have scales, we should have an understanding of how easy to fix that. Okay, so I have all that inputted, I have the system set up. Is this something, do I need to make sure this is a part of just whatever my normal laptop interface with the car is every week, or is this kind of a one and done? How does that work?
Essentially, it's a one and done. We are then broadcasting all of the data from the wheel speed over CAN. So any modern dash display will be able to see that data, log it. ECUs can use it for traction control, launch control, because it's on the same bus. So all of that is in place to integrate with the rest of the vehicle.
Oh, that's not bad. So now I'm getting data that's going to help me in other places, not just my ABS system.
Correct.
That's really cool. How about one of the really cool things is the switch for the different modes and everything. So, you know, we all have different types of racing conditions and all of that. What can you tell us about that and the different modes that the system has?
So we're a what's the right terminology for it? Feed forward into the system. We are telling the car both the amount of grip that you're expecting and the way that you want it to respond when you get to the corner. So the slip position, there are 10 settings, including an off, and they are there from a low grip fast interaction from the system. So if it's wet, damp, you want some stability. You don't want the tires to underspeed at all. You want to be able to stay in control of it for the whole of the corner. The earlier settings are best for that. As the track dries or warms up during a day and you are able to exploit the maximum grip, the modes on the dry end of the setting are there to genuinely maximize the performance. Because the retardation of a tire, there is a slip coefficient, and there is an amount under the speed of the vehicle that we're actually targeting. Depending on the slip position and the conditions and the tires, all of this interacts with it. So the driver can find the right setting for the tires and the grip levels that they have. And we are targeting and keeping the tires under the speed of the vehicle by roughly 10 to 15%, depending on what's needed and the surface. And at that point, you get the maximum retardation. So the driver can control where the tires are, how warm they are. They can adjust it as they're going around.
And I can adjust these things real time. I mean, if it starts raining in the middle of the race, can I just...
Yes, it's all designed to change on the fly.
That's pretty neat. That's really neat.
And then that data is also broadcast over the CAN system. So again, if you have something logging it, or you want to see that data later, or even use it for traction control and only have one input that does both ABS and traction control, that information is being broadcast. So you could use it on the other systems in the car.
That's really cool. In fact, we just had a couple of questions come in from the chat. The first one, is this cockpit adjustable? And if I could expand on that question just a little bit, either Matt or Chris, those 10 settings that you have on there, are these things that are programmable? Are they fixed? How does that work?
They are fixed. They are designed to be a widespread for all vehicles, and you will find certain vehicles will want more or less, but it is for the driver to exploit the last potential out of the system.
Yeah, and that is just all, as you were just describing, completely cockpit adjustable.
Yes, it is. Yes.
On the
Yes. The other thing the system will do, because we have a front and a rear bias, or a front and a rear pressure sensor going into the system, we can work out the bias at real time. So while you're in the braking phase, we are broadcasting the bias information. So again, depending on the dash that you have, you could see that information. And if the driver decides at that point they want more or less front or rear bias, you could adjust it separately, and it would then show that next time you went onto the brakes.
That's really cool. Here's another question that came in from the chat. And again, if you want to ask your question, feel free to type it in because we want to answer the questions that you have. Is it good to see, or I'm sorry, it's good to see more potential ABS options for motorsport. Bosch seemed to dominate the market today with the M5 system. What are the key technical and commercial differences of the Delta system? Thank you, Tim from Alcon.
Bosch is very, very good. The system is very, very good, but it is a price point that is often seen as making it more difficult for the club racer, budget contract racers. So they were our target and our benchmark throughout the whole development phase. I can't say technically the difference between theirs and ours because they don't publish all of their documents saying exactly how everything works, and therefore nor do we. So I cannot compare from a technical point of view, but bear in mind that we use that as our baseline for all of our testing during development of the system.
Yeah, well, the fact is, obviously, this works. It's a huge advantage over factory ABS. And I almost hate to use the word advantage because I don't really think this is a comparison to factory ABS. But the price point is very reasonable for this system, right? I mean, Chris, whenever you're talking to people here in the States about, the system, that has to be one of the key selling factors for something that truly works.
Exactly. Yeah, I get a lot of comparison to not to the other options like Bosch and Continental, but to reprogrammed streetcar systems that are pretty popular right now. And I like to tell people there is no comparison because those systems were still developed first and foremost from a stability and safety standpoint. So this is FIA legal, which those aren't. This is developed from purely ABS motorsport standpoint. So not a comparison.
I like that. All right. This is another question from the chat. What happens if you say jump a curb? Now we're talking about extreme cases, but what do you say?
Yeah, no, that's fair, to be fair. And it's the same idea as I was describing earlier on with a stiffly set up front wheel drive car. Once a wheel is in the air, we will see it slowing down and we can release pressure from that wheel. By the time you come back down, it will regrip, and at that point we'll put pressure in as it can take it. So yes, jumping the curbs is a perfect example for this system working.
The thing to say is to be reassuring. It's not going to throw the system into a fit. And by the way, once you come down from jumping the curb, hopefully you're back on throttle at that point.
I like that. That's great. When it comes to the system and looking at it and everything, honestly, if you look at the pump, it looks very similar to a factory pump, but what's different about this?
Yes, the accumulators are the main hardware design difference. They are, as I say, much larger than we've seen and tested on any other system that we've used. And that's a deliberate choice on our part to be able to unlock those big brakes. Obviously, it's a solenoid that is fast enough to react quickly, which is key. The very early systems were not, and you can feel often if you're driving a very old system a distinct pulse in the pedal. We do ensure that feel comes through the system. There are other very modern systems that you can barely feel the ABS interaction for the driver, and some gentleman drivers may appreciate the fact that you can't feel anything and mash the pedal. However, you will never get the braking performance as if you get some feedback, you can hold on the threshold of where the ABS is kicking in and you get a much better performance. as with any closed loop system, the further over the optimum braking or pressure in the system, we would have to take more away. So you are still looking for a good driver will make a benefit out of an ABS system more than a poor driver. And so you can get right onto the threshold of where the ABS system is interacting with you, and you feel it through a high frequency feedback underneath the pedal.
If we can go back to the software for a minute, I mean, really,
Yes.
I just asked the basic question of the setup and everything, but what else does it offer? You know, when we talk about things like bleeding brakes and different things like that, you know, how does that help interact with the software that you have?
The software has a separate page for braking, and we try and make it, or for bleeding, sorry, we try and make it again simple. It is find a wheel, go through a bleed procedure. At the end of the bleed procedure, there is a test which is to jack up each wheel individually, spin it, make sure that the wheel speed is reacting to the correct wheel, apply the brakes, make sure that the wheel has locked, and then unlock that one wheel on its own and make sure that that one will unlock. So it's a straightforward system in the software. It will go through a selection of pulsing to make sure there's no air in the solenoids of the system. But after that, it also tells you that you've connected up the right wheels to the right corner, because it is vitally important with ABS that it unlocks the correct wheel.
I like that. Yeah. See, for me on the two-wheel side of things, because I'm more into motorcycling, it's always about, you know, it's one thing to bleed the lines and everything, but making
Yes.
sure you're able to bleed the ABS system itself and how important that is. I like the way it like literally wheel for wheel is able to do that.
Yes. Individual wheels, yes.
That's awesome. All right, let's see a couple more questions from the chat, and this is great. We're getting a lot of action here. Is your system suitable for a dual-purpose street/HPDE car?
We have done all of our testing for motorsport. It is not homologated for road use, because the road use for European road use especially, which is where our area of expertise is, you would find that you will need to go through this test, the Annex 6 test, to confirm that it does do the stability. So we personally wouldn't want it used on the road. The system, in theory, would work perfectly well for that.
Back that up with some US based experience. We don't specifically have any legality with ABS systems that I'm aware of, but I would say that if the car already had one of those stability, focused systems that's going to be more safe, and it's going to be used on the street regularly, that's probably a better call to just keep that for those safety reasons. There's nothing saying you couldn't use it on the street. If you had a car that didn't come from the factory with ABS, it's definitely going to be safer than not having ABS. So, that's a grain of salt type thing. Your experience may vary.
Yeah, and while you mentioned that, I do want to go back to the installation. You know, a lot of people are looking at this, and most modern cars, to your point earlier, do have an ABS system. But if I want ABS on something that doesn't have one, or doesn't have the system already, how hard is it to put this system into it and add ABS?
I've had a bit of experience with that with various vehicles here. My own car, for my sins, didn't have ABS originally and has been fitted. Now, it depends on your ability to machine wheel speed pickups or fit a wheel speed pickup to the existing hub assembly of a wheel. That is the key part, making a centralized wheel speed pickup with enough teeth so that we can get enough information. It's not like a traction control system that often has 10 set of teeth only on a wheel. We are looking at a minimum of 40 teeth to be able to see the information before it's happened. So you do ideally need to fit a trigger wheel from an existing car, but often they can be made to fit, if you've got any ingenuity, pretty much any vehicle.
Okay, that sounds like an even more enjoyable challenge in hooking something
Yes.
up that doesn't have it actually. All right. Do you recommend a square pad setup, or do you recommend a split between front and rear axle? I prefer square to go in deeper. ABS seems to struggle with the square setup on my Mustang.
Slightly confused by the terminology square. Front to rear, does it mean split braking system or?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a square pad, or do you recommend a split between the front and rear axles?
Okay, so we have our system is designed for a front and rear split system. So with a bias adjustment and a front and rear.
Okay, and if he types in something else as a follow-up, I'll let you know. All right.
Certainly.
Yeah. Has this system been tried on a dirt type car, or is it a primarily asphalt system?
It is designed for circuit racing and asphalt, but we have experience with UK-based rally cars. There's a lot of rally in the UK, and those have used the system, but it is ideally designed for circuit racing.
I got you. Yeah, and I was going to say, like, if you were doing rally, Rally America has become quite popular here as well. Is this something where
Okay.
if you're in a long dirt section, maybe this is just a different setting on the wheel, and
Yes,
back on the asphalt, different setting on the wheel, which is cockpit adjustable?
exactly that. Yes.
Okay. Hey, Chris, did you want to add to that? I'm sorry.
I think that, and going back to what he was talking about, making sure that you have that pedal feel and feeling as a driver, that threshold, feeling that is going to be even more critical in rally racing and on dirt.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other part of it too, it's not like if you want to, one of the settings on there, as you mentioned earlier, is to turn the system off completely. So if
Yes.
you wanted to not utilize it, it's not like you're married to it. I mean, you could actually turn it off and do whatever you know, would choose.
Yes. If somebody believes that they can stop faster, or a condition is in place that they want to be able to lock the wheels, certain off-road on loose surfaces, you would turn it off. So you actually build up a mound essentially in front of a locked wheel, and you stop quicker against a mound. So an off switch on a completely off-road position, if you wanted to come to a stop, can work occasionally. So yes, it's on there. It's very easy to get to, and it also works as a fault reset. So if you have wheel speed sensors that have a fault, I'm not looking at anyone, but some cars like BMW seem to throw wheel speed sensor faults quite often, and it can be that you can reset it. So you turn it off, let it reset, and turn it back on. And if the system has come back, it will go without having to do a full stop like you would on the OEM system.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Chris, you kind of smiled at that when he mentioned BMW, especially. Any experience that you can share?
No comment.
Fair enough. No, that's good enough. As far as getting this system, and if we're here in the United States watching this, how hard is that to do, Chris?
So we actually stock these units here in Dallas, in Texas. So we're the North American distributor for the Delta ABS system. So if you're in Canada or in the United States, you can get it from us. And like I said, we've got them in stock, so we ship same day or next day, depending upon when you order it.
Is there any type of installer network or anything like that? How does, if I'm just I want to sit behind the wheel kind of race car driver or anything, I'm sure I would have someone working on it anyway, but is there, a little bit of a network? Can you get any help with that?
Yeah, totally understand that. There's quite a few people like that. I mean, we do have an installer program. We don't like to call it our dealer program, rather installer program. And there are, sales metrics to follow for that, and there's discounts to be had for those installers. But yeah, there are people, there are race shops out there that can do the install for you if you don't feel like doing it for yourself, or you don't feel confident enough to do it.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to my brakes, there are things that I'd almost rather have some talented hands working on, as opposed
Yeah.
to you know your limitations, right? For this to be able to help me with my limitations. How about that? Here's a follow-up to what we were talking about with the square setup. He says, I suspect square may have referred to friction level of the pads, front versus rear, split meaning a higher front friction and a lower friction rear, most commonly. Does that help paint the
Okay,
Yeah, I've
yes,
seen it.
that makes more sense. As with the idea of threshold braking, you are, as a driver or as a car tuner setup, you can maximize the system. Essentially, you are looking to optimize the bias, whether that be via having different friction pads front to rear, But the key part is that the wheels should be trying to lock at the same time without the system in place. What we've found, there's a number of threads online. There's a very good example of a Lotus in the UK who fitted our system and found they had a lot of interaction from the ABS and a very firm pedal, and they didn't feel like they had a huge amount of retardation. This was at the same time as fitting a new pedal box and big changes to the rest of the car. So after testing it with the ABS on, he decided, okay, I'll turn it off, go back to that switch, turned the system off, I locked the back wheels and had a little spin because the bias was hugely to the back. The ABS will mask a bias issue if it's there because it's constantly dropping pressure off of whichever axle isn't set up correctly. It's got too much bias to that axle. The ABS will be interacting with it. However, winding, in his case, the bias back forwards, but making the base brakes as good as they can be initially will aid the system. So at that point, the ABS goes back on and you get all of the retardation and the distance is further. So coming back to your question, it doesn't really matter whether the friction is different front to rear in terms of pads, as long as the overall bias is then correct for your vehicle during the stop. And we can just mop up little changes where the surface changes and the tyres, fronts may be warmer, rears might be warmer. At that point, we can take up a little bit of slack in the system and give you the optimum braking performance.
I like that. And you mentioned wheel lockup. And look, there are plenty of series out there, professional series, that ABS just isn't legal. You know, in Formula One, Max Verstappen still locks up his wheels from time to time. Over here in the States in NASCAR, you know, the best do this. And if I'm looking at it, and if they're doing it, I'm probably doing it too. Fact of the matter is, and if I'm doing it, I'm probably doing it a lot more, and I'm probably wearing out tires a lot more. And, you know, that's going to cost me somewhere. I'd rather get ahead of the cost and have a system like this where I'm probably going to enjoy my race days, track days a lot more. Is that fair?
I think so,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I think a place you see a really good application for this is it's been really popular recently to do like amateur endurance racing, the multi-hour stints in cars, and they're pretty fast and loose with the rule set, as far as the construction of the car. Not super fast and loose, but you know what I mean. They allow a lot of different modifications, and ABS is one of them. Most of them allow. And this can save a team, several sets of tires on any given weekend, because you have a varying degree of experience when you have like 6 different drivers getting in a car. Your lowest, experienced driver could, go through 2 sets of tires on accident, of course, but this could save you that money and, pay for itself.
Yeah.
And different tires, it's not always the driver's fault, but different tires react to an underspeed. And again, we've had a lot of experience with different tires, and most of them's performance is very much at the same point. The amount of underspeed to give the maximum braking performance is the same across a wide range of tires, but some are almost silent while they're underspeed. Some scream, and it's something to bear in mind as well. Even with the ABS on, you may get some noise from the tires, but it's holding it at the target speed. Whereas if you're locking, then you are just flat spotting that tire and causing a lot of expensive damage.
Yeah. I mean, look, locking is an out of control event in the race car,
Yes.
plain and simple. And it could cost you in a lot more ways. We just talk about flat spotting tires. You know, you don't want to lock it and be the one that runs into a curb and all of a sudden your right rear suspension's gone, or something like that. I mean, there's, a lot of different things. And the type of racer, the people that we're talking about, again, that can benefit from this, really benefit in a huge way. I mean, this to me isn't an ego thing, as we talked about before. My left or right foot is way better than this. This to me is an enjoyment thing and a performance, which for what most of us are doing, this makes the most sense, I would feel.
It's key as well for lap time. Sometimes there are certain circuits. You saw in a video, the first circuit was our local circuit, which is Snetterton race circuit. And there is into one of the bends, just a rough patch across the circuit. And when we were developing the system, we had a lot of professionals drive our car and us do back-to-backs. And it's amazing when you see professionals brake lift off and go again because they know the bumper's there. And after a little bit of encouragement, it's don't worry about doing that. The system will take care of it. And for a split second, it just takes the edge off and then you can go around. But you can stay on the brakes and you get a higher or a shorter lap time because you have slowed down later at a more consistent rate.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So really, I mean, if to kind of summarize a lot of what we're talking about, it's affordable, number one. And I would say, I don't even know, I would go beyond affordable and say it's very well priced. I mean, it's it's a great deal. It's simple, easy to install. The garage mechanic can do this. I mean, if you're, which isn't a problem, or if you get help, it's a huge advantage over a factory system, which again, going back to the beginning, factories are meant to stop safely in a straight line. None of us are slowing down in a straight line on a racetrack. And everything works. I mean, you guys manufacture all these pieces, correct, Matt?
Yes. Yep. So all of the electronics are, as I said, made in-house, and the block is made for our design for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's pretty awesome. And Chris, for all of us here in the United States, again, getting a hold of you guys, I like the fact I'm DFW based also, just on the Fort Worth side of things. But it's great to just be right there in the middle of the country to be able to get things out quickly and all of that. Is there any warranty involved or anything like that? That's typically a question for people.
Yeah, we are the first point of contact in the United States for 1 year back to base warranty. Basically means that we do bring the unit back in and we send it back over to SCS Delta so they can inspect it. But I think what I've been told in practice, they've never had a unit in for warranty.
Matt, you have anything to add to that?
No, that was perfect. But yeah, we are here to help. Obviously, Chris and his team are your first line of contact. So any install issues, questions, aim it towards them. Anything that wants to be escalated, it comes back to us. Obviously, we know the system inside out. All of the code is written here on site. It's made by us, so we know every component. We know how it's meant to work because it works in the way that we want it to. So we can help with any way that it needs. But as Chris has said, we've never had one back from them at all. So it's perfect.
Yeah, and the other part of it too, I know we've mentioned a few different types of cars. We've talked about Corvettes, BMWs. You mentioned the Lotus. Whether I have a Nissan or an Alpha or something like that. I mean, there's some experience here, and also to be able to call up and say, "Hey, this is what I have. Does the system alone work, or do I need some other things like that?" There's a lot of experience behind what you're putting together in that regard. Correct?
Yeah, we've got a massive back catalogue now of cars that it's been fitted to. We know work with the hardware that's fitted to the car, and we've got good examples of their performance and race wins with that system fitted, which is always good to show.
Awesome. Well, Chris, Matt, this has just been a wonderful education, and really love the product. Again, it's great when you have something that doesn't cost very much, but just simply works and actually is going to improve your performance. I think it checks all the boxes.
Thank you.
Great session, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. And so this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the EPARTRADE platform, distributed through our newsletter and social media channel. In the meantime, we pushed the Delta ABS product back on the homepage of EPARTRADE, so please go and check it out. As well as for more information and update, please visit epartrade.com. Next webinar will be on driver safety. Once again, thank you and goodbye.
EPARTRADE is a digital platform that we've created basically to make life easier in the business community of auto racing.
EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier.
When you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information, and then from there it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Land speed record holder George Poteet's Speed Demon rocketed 481 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. You don't go that fast without ARP fasteners.
There is no way that we could go the speed that we've gone, the number of times we've gone, with a lesser quality bolt than ARP supplies to us, and we absolutely wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for ARP.
When failure is not an option, it's ARP-bolts.com.
We're Performance Plus Global Logistics. Our team of dedicated performance industry and logistics experts get valuable cars and components to the track on time in top condition. We provide expedited logistics solutions for the performance industry using direct routes instead of deferred options, and communicate all necessary information to the appropriate resources to meet regulations and ensure a smooth transit and secure delivery, both domestically and internationally. And we exceed customer expectations by providing best-in-class service with an efficient and cost-effective system in place. Contact us today to book your next shipment.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
With roots in the Midwest that date back well before the Model T, Fifth Third Bank has a long history of serving the needs of automotive companies. While much has changed over the years, our passion for helping businesses put cars on the road and on the track has not. Today, we are more committed than ever as a member of SEMA, a founding member of PRI, and a sponsor of multiple race teams across several racing series. Where can we take your business? Fifth Third Bank.
Where will you find Farea racing components? Circle track, drag racing, and any top race shop. In every form of motorsports competition, our valves and valve train components deliver race-proven design and technology. And we've brought that same performance to our street applications as well. We're backed by 5 decades of experience, an extensive range of off-the-shelf components, and our custom valve department has the fastest turnaround times in the industry. Farea Racing Components. Stand with us or race against us.
When it comes to pushing the limits of performance, the pros know there's no room for compromise. At Crower Cams, we don't just engineer camshafts and valve train components, we redefine what power means. Since 1955, Crower Cams has been the name trusted by racers, engine builders, and gearheads around the globe. Whether you're building a street machine, a dragster, or a track car, Crower Cams provides the muscle you need to dominate. And with Crower, victory is within your reach.
At SeaTech, we're on a mission to lead the storage industry through innovative custom-built solutions that meet every challenge head-on. Designed for versatility, whether in a commercial setting or at home, we create high-quality, durable products that stand the test of time. SeaTech, engineering and innovation.